Welcome to Nostalgia Pilots, a Gundam podcast that once prided itself on its beauty. I'm Hugh.
I'm Jurd.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Spence.
And we're here to talk about episode 1 of Mobile Fighter G Gundam, the Gundam who fell to Earth.
So I immediately did some research on this because the thing that struck me as I guess Spence is also on that same team with me, the non-Gundam nerds. It's Mobile Fighter, right? It's not Mobile Suit, which is what I'm used to up until this point. And you see that different establishment right off the top. Like, the theme song feels more kind of upbeat a little bit, a little less serious in a way. Like, I mean, it's always got that very serious actual lyric set, but it feels a little bit more bouncier. And I guess this is actually the first non-Universal Century show, right? Like, this is the first time they split off.
Yes, so this is the first experiment that, led to Gundam Wing, a year later.
Yeah, Gundam Wing is the second of the non-Universal Century stuff.
So I will say, though, coming into it without any information, it was clearer to me by the end of the show, but the repeated line "shining finger" throughout the theme song without any context.
Yeah, that was so weird.
Yeah. Later it makes more sense, but I was like, what? Shining finger? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry, guys. This is just like your typical shonen show. He gets up later.
Yeah.
I also noticed they've put a wrestling ring buckles around the world. That's great. The laser wrestling buckles.
And if I'm not mistaken, they get utilized like wrestling turnbuckles later.
God. So I came into this going, okay, so a bunch of Gundam suits are coming to Earth for some reason, and the people on Earth are like, hey, massive destruction, leave us alone, okay? And I get that. Because, everybody's very much, hey, we live here. Stop messing up our home.
Yeah, no one wants man-made kaiju tearing up their city.
No. Yeah, so G Gundam universe is very Clockwork Orange in that, everyone who has money lives in the space colonies, and everyone who's left on Earth is poor and no one cares about them. So that's why they have giant robot fights on Earth to determine who rules space.
Yeah, but you don't get that explanation fully until 3/4 of the way through the episode.
Yeah, and I don't want to ruin that moment before we get to it, but it is hilarious the way they decide they're going to deliver the concept of the show. Because basically, a hard grizzled detective turns to a young child and says, "Listen, I'm going to tell you why these Gundams are bastards." And that explains a nonsensical show concept with no context. Just, in case you don't know, they come down here to have a fighting tournament. It's basically blood sport, but with robots. And you're like, what?
And of course this child knows, because the last one killed its parents.
Yep.
Like you needed a reminder, yeah. Okay, but I did want to back it up a second, because is this episode title... Okay, the Gundam who fell to Earth.
Yes.
Is that a Bowie reference? Is that a reference to the Bowie
starting with
movie?
the Bowie reference, which is always good.
That's fantastic.
He has the main character has a bit of that swashbuckling aspect to him too. I did enjoy that.
That's because he has the power of a cape.
Oh, and what a cape with powers.
Well, listen, you'll find out later that he technically doesn't need a robot to fight robots.
Nope.
Listen, he caught a bunch of bullets with his hands while holding a child.
Yeah, that was pretty hilarious, actually. And then we determined that he was the King of Hearts.
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Through his magical tattoo.
But first, I want to back it up, because we got to talk about this inspector first. Because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to like the inspector or hate the inspector. At first, I'm like, he's got a point. Just like Spence did. These robots are coming to the Earth, they're trashing the place. And frankly, although I have no real idea where this episode is supposed to take place, it's a rather beautiful, kind of gothic European city. It's got its problems, but...
It's taking place in Rome, and you're supposed to know it's Rome, based on the fact that the first thing that Domon does is crash land on a church.
Oh, yes. Right. Okay.
He literally crashes on top of the Trinidad de Monte on top of the Spanish Steps in Rome.
and they say, hey, this used to be a tourist attraction. And he's like, meh.
Yeah, it used to be a Roman church.
And also, you learn where you're at a lot of the times by what type of Gundam one of them are fighting. And the name of the guy is he's using the Chiros Gundam, I think it's called.
No, it's actually called the Nero gun, the Nero Gundam.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Another Roman connection.
Now, I don't like the Inspector because although I do say he's great at throwing shade, but he ruins that pizza. I am very upset with how.
Well, that whole situation was like. That was when I turned. I was like, is this police brutality? But at the same time, he's trying to give him some nutrition. Like, this is very confusing.
No. Because during that whole interrogation scene, he and his assistant are playing bad cop, art instructor cop.
He reminds me a lot of Jim Gordon in the Harley Quinn animated series.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
You mean very sad?
Very, very sad and grizzled and not above doing terrible
Sometimes
things.
a little crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Inspector arrests the Gundam pilot on suspicion of being a Gundam pilot.
First of all, we have to talk about the fight scene with the gang from Fist of the North Star.
It's just
I thought that was a sweet gang. Like, they had hover bikes, they had spiky cars.
They all had multicolored hair.
they're literally a gang of ruffians from the post-apocalyptic world of Fist of the North Star. Like, they're muscle-bound, spiked dudes. Like, they would fit right in with the Morton Joe.
Yeah, so and these are all dudes who work for Michaelo Charriot, who is the pilot of the Neros Gundam.
I told you
is
when we
the
started,
New Italy Gundam fighter.
when I told you this, guys, I told you the names of these characters would be amazing. And his name is Michaelo Charriot.
And we find out later on in the episode via some exposition from one of the little kids who show up that he used to be like the head of the mafia and then he became a Gundam fighter.
That is a backstory you're gonna hear a lot, like where someone started out as either a really good person and then became a Gundam fighter pilot, and then went off the rails, or they were already off the rails and someone thought it was a really good idea to give them a giant robot.
But the important thing to remember for all of these characters is that all of these characters are like a stereotype of a job that someone would have in that country.
Yeah.
And that country's robot will amplify that stereotype in some way.
And don't worry, all the people from the beginning half of this series will come back with a power-up to fight our heroes again.
Well, okay, so I do have a question then. Does this Inspector continue as a character, or is this the only episode where we see him? Because how does he get around?
The Inspector and the Moppets will not be back.
Okay, that actually makes me feel better to know the Moppets will not be back.
Aww, but I'm sad that the Inspector won't be back.
You listen, this episode is like an octopus. It is covered in tentacles of plot threads to nowhere. Like, you find out about the picture, but you don't know what's the deal with the picture. They talk about he's the King of Hearts, but you don't really know what that means. You know, it makes him a badass, but you don't know what it means. And you also don't understand why they're fighting these fights. Like, they throw so much at you in this episode that I'm just surprised that anybody watched after the first episode. Like, because if you came from any of the Gundam series before this to watch this, it is a literal just upheaval of everything you've understood at this point.
Well, yeah, I totally agree, but I found myself as a non, I enjoy Gundam when we watch it, but I'm not, deeply involved in the lore. I don't have the depth of knowledge you guys do, but I was really engaged by this. This was fun. They managed to get an actual fight in the first episode instead of just talking about it the entire time. We didn't have the DBZ problem where they're just kind of, all right, I'm going to fight you. All right, I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you. And then, they actually got to it, which was nice.
Oh, like, you'll probably be tired of fights. Like,
you'll be tired of fighting.
Because, again, this show is centered around a tournament, and I've seen this series multiple times, all 52 episodes. And I still don't technically understand how or why they came to the decision to have giant fights for the dominance of space. Like, whatever happened to, I don't know, a space congress or like the UN, like any governing body to like unify the world. No.
What you don't understand, of course, is that they do have a governing body. Unfortunately, that governing body is the UFC.
Yeah. So.
Now, I will say, Jurd, there is one part of this episode that I'm sad to say is not here, and it would have been right up your alley because you love announcers.
Oh, I do indeed. And
we hear the announcer's voice, but we don't see him yet.
Yeah, we don't get his intro, we don't get his visage, but the announcer in this show is one of my favorites.
Oh, so
but he's a literal character, and it's pretty great.
That's what I was gonna say. We got a little intro piece with a different, and I was a little bummed that it wasn't Voltron guy. But if we actually have him in here as a character, that's pretty exciting.
Yes, he actually does. And for most of the series, he is just someone you see at the beginning of the episodes and through the recap. But later in the show, he actually is a character in the show.
Yeah, because he's actually the announcer when they do when they get to Hong Kong and actually do the tournament.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I have a question from early in the episode. So the main character, he's in a bar with his coat, and the little kids have recently raided a house, and they've got cash, and they're like, yeah, we're rich. Yeah, but that you can just burn, and that's the best way to use that. Jewels are what's gonna be more helpful. And so there's this whole plot thing. They have the fight with the mafiosos, and then later on, when they get back to this abandoned hotel with what is the main character's name again?
Okay, the main character is Domon Kashu.
Okay.
Yes. And his best friend and mechanic is Rain Makamura.
Okay. So Rain has an interesting item.
Okay. So they go to this hotel, which is like in the basement of the Pantheon, I guess.
Something like that.
It's the Pantheon Hilton.
And they're like, hey, street urchins, thanks for the food. You can come stay with us tonight in this.
Which they stole, and they're like, they left this bread outside.
So we're gonna take it and eat it. So and they're like, hey, mister, you should be careful because what's his face is probably gonna come get you. And sure enough, the wall cracks and he's like, I found you.
He punches through the wall with his giant robot.
And she pulls out a compact and makes a bubblegum bubble around them.
Listen.
Yeah, it's like a bubblegummy sort of shield.
Bubblegum bubble shield.
Listen, y'all. Remember, this is contemporary Sailor Moon. And this is a contemporary of Sailor Moon. And Sailor Moon had her Moon Prism compact. Like,
yeah, I know. That's the first thing. That's the first artifact that she got. Don't question me on Sailor Moon. I know my shit.
So Rain is handy, and she has a bunch of like tricky devices and stuff that she uses because she's the mechanic.
Yeah,
Okay.
think of Rain like if you've seen a lot of anime and you've seen how like ninjas are depicted where they have a lot of gadgets and hoo-ha. Rain is basically a Gundam ninja.
Gotcha.
She's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say that her character is the one place where I see the possibility of not liking or finding a fault in our main character, because although, he's the standard, like, I don't care about these kids until he does care about the kids kind of guy. I am a little concerned about that. He's the kind of guy who gets in a fight and just walks away, and then Rain's like, no, it's okay. I'll fix the Gundam, and I know where to meet him, and that couple, and I don't know that I'm going to dig that, but
Yeah, no. That's
yeah, wait for it.
I will say, Domon is problematic until he's not. like it's real bad when you meet the womanizing Jiminy Crockett, and you're like, he's better than Domon, correct? Like, he's a better person, right? Like,
okay, there's a lot going on with Jiminy Crockett. Jiminy Crockett is like enough backstory for 5 people.
he really and he's amazing. He's literally my favorite character. Like,
but my question is, could Rain's bubble compact defeat Lydium's bomb compact? Who wins in that fight?
Well, considering that the bubble compact had a building fall on top of it and was still intact.
It also took bullets from a Gundam's Vulcan cannons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of it absorbed a lot of damage.
So I think it would outlast Lady Un's explosive compact, because the explosive compact only has one use.
Well, I feel like Lady Un would throw the exploding compact, and Rain would like put up the shield, and then by the time she brought the shield back down, she'd realize that she's been dropped out of the back of an airplane.
And then she'd put it back up and float.
I think she'd still die from the impact. Like, I feel like once she hit the ground, because I don't think this thing floats. Like,
if it holds water, if it holds air, it's going to float.
I can kind of already see that the team that I really want is Karen, Rain, and then like Sally Poe and Noin.
I am here for it, but as long as Noin is not in the fringe.
I will say, listen, I will say you do get Rain piloting a Gundam later in this show. Like,
That's not a spoiler, though.
It's not, but it's not. Like, it's probably the first time I can think of a female Gundam pilot. Like
I mean, didn't Noin?
Yeah, but
but this was the year before then.
Yeah, but this was before Gundam Wing.
Okay.
And remember, Noin never piloted a Gundam. She piloted mobile suits, but she never piloted a Gundam.
Yeah, she does have that sweet white Taurus.
That is true. That sadly she doesn't do much with. Like, God, Gundam Wing. You could have done so much with those side characters.
Okay, but back to G Gundam, because not only does the Neros Gundam try and kill them, but
it kidnaps Sophia.
Yeah, it kidnaps the child, and then Michaelo kicks a laser at them.
Not even the boy children, but the little girl child, the sweet little girl child,
who gave him back his picture after he dropped it.
One of my favorite things about this series is, like I said, Domon doesn't need a Gundam to fight Gundams. And to be fair, the Nero's Gundam, Michaelo Charriot, he didn't technically need one either, because they all have like kung fu magic ki powers. Like,
yeah, like everyone in this has like a Street Fighter level like martial arts power.
Like Hadouken.
Michaelo Charriot has the flash kick.
Yeah, they even reference it at one point. They're like, "You have those fancy silver feet, but I have the shining finger." Okay, well, while we're speaking on that, actually, I guess we haven't got them both in a Gundam just yet, but I will say that I find the change in interface for how they pilot the Gundams interesting, because it's much more digital, and they're sort of, I mean, it's kind of Pacific Rim without all of the extra mechanical stuff holding them down, which doesn't make a huge amount of sense in some ways, because if you're in essentially a open bouncing sphere as you're being tossed around in a fight, you're probably going to get thrown around quite a bit. Have
you ever seen anything like Getter Robo or Giant Robo or anything of like those old mech shows?
Giant Robo, but only like it's been a long time.
So if you've ever seen Getter Robo or like Mazinkaiser, one of the things you learn is that those robots are actually piloted to the utmost with machismo. And literally the definition of how they pilot them is by screaming at the top of their lungs and burning their youth to create powers. And you see a little bit of that once he gets through the latex and the little diddly bobs are sticking off of it. You see that he has energy that powers the Gundam as he's charging up. And it's literally the same thing as like a Getter Robo or a Mazinkaiser. Like, the louder your protagonist screams and the more burning youth and passion he has, the more powerful his robot is. And yes, Gurren Lagann is full of that.
So let's talk about the body condom that's needed to deal with this suit. First of all, at what point do they strip their clothes off to do this transformation? Because that always
we
bothers
do
me.
see Michaelo rip off his leather jacket with giant shoulder pads to have a different outfit with giant shoulder pads on underneath it.
Domon does do an awesome cape toss.
Yeah, and we do sort of get the whole
But is the cape
sequence
attached to the rest of his clothes?
Maybe. You never know. They could be breakaway.
Like, I think everyone's in... We don't see him get in either. We just sort of see the blooming onion at the top of the Spanish Steps open, and the robot gets up, and then it goes right into him, like, getting into the latex suit already naked.
All right, this is the one thing about this show that I like so far, is there's not a... We just mysteriously have this giant robot hanging out here. They do camouflage of the robot. So, this robot had like a mountain covering it. And then even when it came out of the mountain, it was a giant pod. It could have been an arena or somebody's weird mobile floating house or something. So it wasn't just like very conspicuous. Hey, look, here's my Gundam.
Yeah, that unveiling though was very Lotusy. Was that just me?
Yeah. So
no, it was not
it's like you. It is very stylized. Because all of these robots are very stylized, and this robot represents Japan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, remember, he is Neo Japan's fighter.
Right. So I did find it, while we're talking about the latex transformation, I did kind of find it funny that Domon's like grunting during his transformation. It almost seems like painful. And then Michaelo's
body problem.
Yeah, and then Michaelo's just like, rip, I'm good. Like it's not uncomfortable for him. He was just good to go. I don't know. Anyway,
he was wearing it all the time, I guess.
Remember, you've got to show your utter machismo when you pilot these Gundams. So you've got to show that your manliness to rip through this body condom so you can fight with these buns of steel that they literally freeze frame the camera on.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about that.
As someone who has watched many Magic Girl transformations where there is lots of stopping on certain areas, I appreciate that this was done on a male character.
Listen again. I can't think of a lot of TNA that is geared towards dudes in this show. Like they're still pretty boys, except for one Gundam pilot who's actually kind of reminiscent of I'm cursed, my third battle, everyone's gonna die from
Sanders.
Yeah, he's
Sanders.
But because again, we haven't met the rest of this crew, and I can't tell you the name of the crew. But again, plot points abound. The King of Hearts is a plot point.
Oh, yeah. So we should actually explain how that comes out, because although we've already got to the transformation, technically he just strolls in to retrieve the girl, theoretically, and that's when he decides.
Where Nero's Gundam is holding it like a yo-yo.
I want to know how he didn't crush her in his hand as he was walking.
And of course... Oh, sorry?
No, I'm just like, I don't know how the Nero's Gundam didn't crush that small child in its hydraulic hand.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of that kind of in the previous shows too. I seem to recall Commander What's-His-Face picking up some, what was it, the Gorilla Girl in the previous episode as well, or in the previous series.
Yeah, a lot of King Kong there.
Yeah, exactly. So he gets shot at by everybody and manages to catch all of the bullets, and then we see his King of Hearts tattoo.
Which appears and disappears.
Under his sweet Michael Jackson glove. I have no idea what's going on there.
Again, when your machismo reaches a certain level, you have to flash your gang sign.
Yeah, fair.
It's King of Hearts.
And that's when they get into the fight sequence. Now, I will say, so far I'm quite enjoying this series. I mean, it's only one episode in, but I'm digging it. But I will note that coming out of MS8's team, there is a drop in the quality of the animation. It's still good. It also feels like it's going for a different tone. So part of that is the gritty, sort of more realistic approach of MS8's team versus this much more kinetic, kind of cartoony, physics. But you also feel it. It's just not as high frame rate in places and things like that.
This is true. So this was broadcast TV. It's 52 episodes, so they're sort of a little bit cheaper. We're going to see a lot of recycled animation.
And you will see upticks in animation when it comes to key like plot points and fight scenes. Like but that's kind of a thing that happens a lot with these 52 episode series like Gundam. Like and Gundam is cash for this. Gundam is known for having long series. I mean, there's only one series of Gundam that I can think of that did not go the full length of the show because it was canceled. But Iron-Blooded Orphans, 52 episodes. Gundam Wing, 52 episodes. The original Mobile Suit Gundam, 101,000 episodes. So they are keen on this 52 episode thing, even though a lot of these series could be trimmed down and probably made a lot better off just by getting rid of some of these episodes and getting a more tight story.
Now, that's probably, I assume, based on, seasonal television restrictions. They, I assume it's some multiple, like 2 years or 3 years or something worth of TV.
Yes. So the idea is that this is a weekly series that these are weekly series that go for a full year. And that's sort of based on the model of Sentai series. Okay.
Yeah. And again, you don't see that very often. Like if you think about it now in modern anime times, the last Gundam we got was Iron-Blood Orphans. Before that was Gundam Unicorn, and then I think before that was Gundam 00. But there was quite a bit of time between each of those series. Mm-hmm. If you look, when you go from like Mobile Suit to Zeta to Double Zeta to Shark's Counterattack to this to Gundam Wing, there's what, maybe 2 years between each, give or take?
There were actually a bunch of series between 00 and Iron-Blooded Orphans that just didn't come out in the States. Japan got Gundam Age and Gundam Reconquista in G.
Oh, is it Gundam Age, the one with the Dragon Gundams?
Or Gundam Age is the one where it's like the three protagonists. That it's like the guy, his son, and his grandson.
And they have the weird space flying things. And then
yes.
Reconquista in G is the one that like people say is good, but no one's ever really seen it.
Yeah, Reconquista in G is the one where like Yoshiyuki Tamino came back and was like, "You screwed this up, I'm fixing it."
Oh,
and it didn't do well.
He did a George Lucas.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, like one of the things I love about G Gundam is because G Gundam is the definition of shut your brain off and enjoy this type of thing. Because it's one of those like brightly colored, like silly things are happening, and it doesn't suffer from things like trash kid characters.
Well, we haven't gotten to Sai Saishi yet, but that's neither here nor there.
He's a main character though.
We did also, at the closeout of the fight, I did enjoy the rule number 1 of Gundam fighting tournament or whatever, and that whole situation, like it felt like exposition to some extent, but the animation was good. The skull crushing was fun. I don't know. It was a satisfying conclusion to the first 24 minutes of the show.
So we do sort of end with Domon traumatizing this mafia leader so badly his hair turns white. And then he goes to prison because he lost.
Well, he was also disbarred, right? He's disbarred because he began the fight too early or some nonsense, or he was aiming for the cockpit or something. I can't quite remember what it was, but...
Yeah, so Domon implies that like he broke the rule by going for the cockpit, although you don't really see him actually attack the cockpit. You just see him shoot his like shin lasers everywhere.
Yeah. It wasn't entirely clear, but it was obvious he was disbarred and then jailed, so okay. Although I did like the closing note of the inspector showing up and tossing him a box and being like, "It's that pizza I promised you."
This is the shade I'm talking about, because this is a super asshole move. Like, you just face planted this guy into a pizza, and then he saves this kid and your town from a mafioso in a Gundam, and you're still gonna be like, Remember that pizza?
No, listen.
Okay.
Maybe if you were anywhere else, but I'm sure in Rome that must be some fine pizza.
Okay, like judging by the shape of the box and the way he tosses it, he can say that that's a pizza, but that is a carton of cigarettes. That is very clearly a carton of cigarettes.
Listen, it was a calzone or a stromboli. That didn't necessarily have to be a pizza. Cigarette.
Take the cannolis, leave the Gundam.
Yes.
Oh man, like G Gundam it's a trip. It is a wonderful trip, and we've not even gotten into the actual plot of the series, the actual core concept of the series.
This series is entirely made out of yes and there's like an entirely section where it like becomes a horror anime for like 4 episodes. Ooh. And then it becomes Dragon Ball for the next 4 episodes without changing locations.
Listen, Hugh mentioned that there is still no model kit of this one Gundam from this series, and my answer was yeah, because it would be like 4 feet tall. Like if it was made to scale compared to the other Gundams, it would be massive.
Yeah, the designs just like get farther and farther out there as the series goes on, and it's pretty great. And we only get a shot, like a brief shot of what the space colonies look like in this episode, and the real reveal of how insane they are is so good. I don't want to wreck it.
Yeah, this
like show... next episode we're gonna get an establishing shot of what Neo America's space colony looks like, and I love it so much. And it's my favorite thing.
And Jurd, just remember Apollo Creed in Rocky, was it 3? In Rocky 3 where he fights Dolph Lundgren?
Yes. In Russia, yes.
Think of that, but now translate that with the Japanese mind into anime, and that is Chibbity Crockett.
Well, Chibbity Crockett is Rocky, who is also a country singer, who is also Batman, who is also piloting a giant freaking robot,
who also is technically what's his name from Fighting Spirit. If he did the Dempsey role, it would literally be him from Fighting Spirit.
It is literally like there was a brainstorming session where they're like, "What are American things?"
Stars and Stripes. Yeah. All right, cool.
Boxers are American fighters, so this guy should be a boxer.
The fact that his name is Jiminy Crockett is by itself.
Chibbity Crockett.
Chippity, whatever, man.
Listen.
This
is what an American name sounds like.
Listen. This show from top to bottom is amazing because it's ridiculous.
I will say we don't get as good a closing theme as Gundam Wing's magical Relina Safari.
Yeah, I was a little bit bummed to just see this sort of recursive earring. I don't know if you guys had the same end I did, but I just had that recursive earring moment, and the song is a little bit like the bar is closing. It's a little bit dingy, and there's a lady up on the karaoke machine, and
yep.
Yeah, this is G Gundam to me is my favorite. It's my favorite Gundam series, just because it's fun. Like again, it's super fun. Again, I do think it has a weaker opening theme and ending theme than other Gundam series. I mean, White Reflections is an amazing song from Gundam Wing, and the opening and ending theme credits for both of them are really, really good. The Gundam Wing Endless Waltz music is fantastic. I don't think this show ever gets to that level when it comes to the music and the theme side of things, but I do think it puts away that like pretentious, like super serious, like child soldier attitude because of just how lighthearted and silly a lot of the things that happens in this show is. Like, you have a windmill Gundam at some point.
Yeah, so like this is the series where they were sort of like, we wanted to do this thing for years, but we couldn't because we were doing a gritty series about war in space and psychic child soldiers. But now we can make a actual like underwater Gundam robot that is an actual fish.
Oh God. Oh God.
Listen. The third episode, you get to meet Neo Francis Fighter. Like,
Oh, I have a lot to say about Neo Francis Fighter, and I suspect Spence will as well when they get there. I have theories about Georges Descend.
It's just this, and the credit to the show, they don't beat around the bush. Like, think about how long it took us to get all of our main character Gundam pilots together in Gundam Wing. This show does not beat around. Second episode, we get Chippity Crockett. Third,
like the first five episodes after this one are all going to be him like going on this world tour, meeting all the other like important Gundam fighters that are going to be significant as the series goes on.
yeah, and throughout that, you learn what the significance of that thing on his hand is, which is great. Do we meet Master Asia?
We don't get to Master Asia until like they show up in Neo Tokyo.
Oh man,
There's literally a part in the series where it is Neo Tokyo, because why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Yep.
yeah,
Like,
it was filmed on the set.
is shameless in its sort of like, this thing from Fist of the North Star is fun, so we're taking it, and this thing from Akira is fun, so we're taking it, and this idea from those other series are good, so we're taking them.
And I grew up watching Go Nagai mech shows, so I love Go Nagai. I want to be the next Go Nagai.
Yeah, so it's a lot of what do boys like, and how can we put it into this framework. But it's fun.
Yeah, I'm on board so far. Shall we discuss our favorite moments?
Okay. So my favorite part is definitely the part where Nero's Gundam just like punches through a random wall, and Domon dives backwards down the stairs, like holding the two kids that don't get kidnapped by the giant robot hand. And at the time, he's like holding this giant loaf of bread they stole, and he's just snacking on it. And then after like they reach the bottom of the stairs and get down, you do see the loaf of bread tumble behind him, which I thought was a nice little flourish.
It was for some reason they had to get that continuity in there.
But they had that continuity, but I don't know if you noticed, there's a commercial break there, and I don't know if you watched the English version or not, or if it was the same thing in the Japanese, but he says, a Gundam, when it first like breaks through the wall. Very definitive, very like hard statement. A Gundam. And then they go to the commercial break real quick, and they come back and he goes, a Gundam? Like, it's a total different line read. And I was like, what? How are we supposed to, what?
So you did watch the dub?
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing about G Gundam is that the dub in places is significantly changed from the original Japanese.
Yeah, I think you would get a kick out of watching this with the original. And I know the subbed version is on Crunchyroll.
Or just with the subtitles on.
I do watch it with the subs on at the same time to see what the differences are. The only thing I really noticed this episode was there's a hubbub early on. I'm trying to remember when it actually takes place. It's the bikers. There's a hubbub and they kind of whatever. And in the actual dub version, there's just kind of like a normal, like, hey, what's going on? Hey, hey, hey. But in the sub, it just said, bro. That was awesome.
Yeah. There was a part where one of the dudes gets thrown and the other bunkers are like, Anarchy! Which, going back to those tropes. But when the series was brought over, it was brought over after Gundam Wing. And a bunch of like toy stores, and specifically Walmart in particular, was very mad that they had to sell something called a Death Scythe Hell. So they actually got approval on like all of the Gundam names and changed like half of them.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that.
And not coincidentally, they changed most of the ones that are the most racist.
Oh, well, yeah, fair.
So I know this is terrible radio, but Hugh, one of the first things a gift Hugh ever gave me was a mini Burn Shining Gundam.
Awesome.
Because again, this show is fantastic. But
it is holding the laser sword that it never effing uses.
No, it doesn't. I think it uses it once. But remember that you have to get your upgrade. You gotta get your power upgrade first. Goku has to get his sensu bean before you can use that power. My favorite, I would have to say, is just how much Hero Yui is in him when Rain comes and is like, yeah, you can let him go. He's a Gundam pilot, like, and has his passport. And she's like, you wouldn't have got arrested if you just had this on you. And his answer is to just tear it up.
Yeah, I'm like, you're going to go to another country. What are you going to do at the border?
Like, I was just like, wait a minute. Like that. I mean, I guess no one can say anything to you if you're in a robot, but like,
yeah. My favorite moment was actually kind of in that same zone, because I think they're coming out of the cop station when that happens, and he's got the cape off, I guess, because he was indoors, I don't know, and he puts it on, but he basically just does this motion where he kind of like throws it across his chest, and then it's just on. It's like amazing. It's this magic cape. It just snaps into place. It's
called
Oh, sorry?
Magnets.
Oh, I guess. It reminded me of those snap bracelets that were big when I was a kid.
Listen, he's got to pilot his giant robot naked, so he has to get that cape off quick.
Again, he's in a bunch of 90s breakaway clothing. I didn't know they made them in business casual, but it's fine.
I do love that his outfit is like a work shirt, black pants, regular work boots, and a red cape.
And his Brambo bandana. Yes. Oh, man. So, Spence, what was your favorite part of the episode?
Bubblegum shield.
It's a useful item. I feel
it's super useful. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know why a mechanic would decide to make one of those. Like, are they in situations frequently enough where it is absolutely necessary? But sure. It works. It's effective. It's pliable. It will probably float if thrown out of a airplane into the ocean.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I would say that she's the Lucius Fox to his Batman to some extent, right? Like, you just got to expect there's going to be some blowback and that you're going to end up in an awkward situation in which your, self-absorbed millionaire is not paying attention and you're actually not in an armored suit.
Yeah.
And when we do, eventually get the backstory of why he's on Earth, why they're doing this, who that guy is that they're looking for. It makes a lot of sense that she has a bunch of self-defense weapons on her.
Yeah, I will say the thing that came out of this episode, the mystery that I'm most eager to have solved, is who that guy is in the picture. Because even at the end of the fight where he's crushing the other guy's head, he's like, I have one last question to ask you. Who is this guy? He's like the Columbo of giant fighting robots.
Have you seen?
Well, no, clearly that chain-smoking inspector is the Columbo of this series.
Yeah, well, okay, fair.
Just one last thing. They abandoned us on Earth.
Yeah, anyway, I don't want to go back to that part of the episode, but what was that inspector thinking carrying like a World War I rifle against giant robots? Anyway.
I mean, I was hoping he'd shoot one of those Gundam pilots before they got in their Gundam. Like, they go to get in the cockpit, they just get their brains blown out. Like,
well, they tried, right? And then he kicked the bullet or whatever, and it knocked the girl off of her suspended rope.
Yeah, they're so good martial artists that you can't shoot them. They're like Dragon Ball characters. And on that note, does anyone have anything they would like to add?
No, I'm out of notes.
I'm just happy we've gotten the G Gundam now. Like, I blew off the dust from my DVD set of this show, and I'm enjoying it tremendously.
I am full of WTFs.
Listen,
that was like my entire experience. Is what the fuck?
Don't worry, save them because you're gonna need them.
Oh, I have a whole basket full. Don't you worry.
Like, I went ahead a few episodes and showed Jen some scenes from certain things. that involve a horse, and I'll just leave it. And she was like, "What the hell?" And I was like, "Isn't it amazing?" So I cannot. My enjoyment from this run of Nostalgia Pilots is literally going to be watching you and Jurd go through this show because it is absurd.
Yes. Okay, so you can find all our show notes over at nostalgiapilots.com. Follow on Twitter at nostalgiapilots, and leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice. It helps other people find the show. Find all of my other work at hughjodonnell.com.
You can find all of mine over at skinner.fm.
And you can find all I do at nerdsandvoices.com.
And you can find me at resonantmoon.com.
And until next time, here, it's the pizza I promised you.
Damn it, I was going to use eat the pizza, eat it.
Are you having trouble keeping up with the ebbs and flows of modern geekery? Is the real world holding you back from knowing what is happening in the geeky world? To answer these and other personal problems brought in by your friends, gaming group, and loved ones, Geek Radio Daily presents daily informational sessions brought to you by the wonderful Billy Flynn, the Flynnstress, and podcasting's Rich Siegfried. They contain such helpful segments as history, geek birthdays, box office results, the latest in DVD and Blu-ray, video game and comic releases. Why, they also have a Sweekly show hosted by the wonderful Billy Flynn and the Flynnstress, which includes interviews and commentary. And to make sure you are informed, Geek Radio Daily also provides you with your daily dose of geek news to make sure you know more than that jerk know-it-all Steve. Visit us at geekradiodaily.com. That's right, Geek Radio Daily. All the geek without the weight. Now available in fine Corinthian leather.